Hello.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Farm to School Book Club. We are so excited to talk to our students virtually as best we can and bring new books discussions to you guys and just try to connect during this time. We are wrapping up our current book, which is Eat Less Water by Florencia Ramirez. Last week we zoomed in with her to make homemade tortillas, which was really fun. And this week, she sent us a few discussion questions that we probably won't have time to get through all of them today, but I think we should just kind of pick a few. And these are questions about the chapter 1, which is the wheat chapter. And in general, what Eat Less Water is about how we can be more conscientious about how much water is involved in growing and producing all of the food that we eat, and so that we can be more mindful about hopefully not wasting so much food as a society, and being smarter about the places we buy food and where that food is sourced. So it's been a super interesting book. I'm about halfway through it. I love to listen to it on Audible because Audible is free right now, and I get to go outside and walk around my neighborhood and listen to her book. One question, Anna, do you want to chime in?
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah.
Guys. One of the questions?
Or I can read a question. Should we start the first one?
Yeah, let's do it.
So in her book, she goes and she interviews some farmers, which is really fun for us to learn about. And so she interviewed a farmer named John DeRosier, and he grows his acres of wheat with green water. This is in contrast to almond farms and vineyards near his farms that use blue water. What's the difference between green and blue water, and why is green water a better choice to save water resources around the globe?
Absolutely. So green water is actually going to be like your rainwater that you're getting. Wait, am I mixing those two up? Green. Hold on, I took some notes on this.
You're right.
Yeah, your rainwater is your rainwater, right? So you're like relying on your natural ecosystem and weather patterns to go ahead and feed your crop, whereas blue water, you're using more of the surface water. And so you're kind of like pulling from that system versus allowing it to refill. So those are like the two main differences. Then you have gray water, which is like kind of your runoff secondary water. It's usually like polluted water, so you don't want to use that at all either.
What I thought was super interesting from that chapter was she said that there are certain farms, like only in a few states in the country, where they're growing wheat entirely with blue water. And that's just because they get so much rain already that they don't even have to irrigate their crops. And so as a society, if you check out where your flour or your bread is coming from, if it's coming sourced from one of those farms, then we are conserving a ton of water because we're actually not even irrigating it, which I was pretty cool. So she calls him a dry farmer, which means he farms without having to irrigate. I don't really think do we have any dry farmers in California?
He's in Paso Robles.
Yeah.
So he's there dry farming. That was actually like super shocking to me. I know the Midwest does a lot of dry farming with like corn and soybeans and things like that, because there's just like tons of rainstorms in the summer that come through. But I hadn't heard of any like California dry farmers specifically, because we just don't have a lot of rain.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? So is he the farm that he has really good cover crops, and the cover crops help like root the water really deep down, and so it retains? That's okay. So maybe that was.
So he goes out and plows when he knows the rain's coming. He plows right before to let that water soak underneath. So they don't use, their well is only what they say 300.
Yeah.
And most of them are like 1,000, the newer ones.
Yeah.
And so he was saying how because of this, he can use land that none of his neighbors want because they don't think it's like fertile land to have any crop on. And so he uses the cover crops, which I think it was just grass, if I recall. It was just grass. And then he has like 4 quadrants, and half of it he grows the cover crop and half of it he grows the wheat, and then he'll switch. So although he can't use all of his land all the time, he's not having to pay for water, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And then there's a part in the book where she talks about calculating your water footprint. And I think I do like that in like every chapter. So she taught us that if a water footprint of bread equals 11 gallons of water and pasta is 230 gallons of water, you know, to teach us how to calculate how many gallons of water we eat. And I think like why this is really interesting is that so many of us think that the best way we as individuals can conserve water is just by taking shorter showers, but she's saying you can conserve a ton of water by eating more water-wise products. I really like this question. The soil on John, how do you say his last name? DeRosier.
Yeah, I would say it, yeah.
The soil on his farm looks like a moist chocolate cake because it's alive with microbiology. He describes the process of building the health on his soil. And the plot here is breaking down the cover crop. The roots are feeding the microorganisms, bacteria that work to convert nitrogen from the air into nitrogen the plant can use. So there are gazillions of these microorganisms that lie underground in the humus. Why is it important to build soil with organic matter, or humus, as John calls it?
Yeah. Our humus is like super important in soil structure. So it actually holds, I think like 80, like it can hold up to like 80 or 90% water and provides like more pore space in there. So it's like also feeds the system too. When you add like humus or have like compost added in, you have all those microbes and organisms that'll like network down and infiltrate into your soil, creating more pore space and actually like breaking up harder. Like if you run into a rock or you run into like a thick thing of clay, it'll help to break that down and allow more pore space for water to infiltrate longer. And I think that's why it's important. He does like grasses and legumes, and I think he's doing grasses because grasses have like, you know, when we're like out in the garden and you rip out like one of the grasses that we don't want out there, its roots are like super long and really annoying to get out. But when you have that, you're creating so much pore space, especially if you're like turning it over. And if he's like kind of tilling that top part of his land where he rotates that out, you still have all that pore space really deep down. There's actually the Bread Lab is like it's like a GMO farm for organic farming, and their whole thing is dry farming different wheat varieties, and their goal is to increase the diversity of wheat and grain varieties and grasses. So their whole thing is to make perennial grasses, so their roots are like 12 feet long.
Whoa.
And the soil just like
back every year.
And it comes back every year. Yeah. And so they like use the GMO process to slightly alter it, but for organic methods. So it's not like you're adding a bunch of fertilizer and pesticides and things like that. Like they made it so it can fit into like a natural system. A little bit of help from science.
I just love listening to you talk about soil.
I
know. What do you think? So what are we doing in our gardens to make our soil look like a moist chocolate cake?
Ooh, that's what we're trying to get, right? So each garden's like a little bit different, right? Adding compost is like super key to helping build that soil structure. We're also doing like low tillage. So we're not like ripping out all of our crops and constantly tilling it in. We're trying to like build that and layer it up. So instead of tilling, what we use is our broad fork, which is for our viewers, like a 4-prong guy. You put them in the ground and you like wheel it back and forth, and that loosens up the soil. And also like you have these really long prongs. It's probably about like 18 inches or so, and that's digging into the ground, allowing more pore space as well without disturbing too much of the soil biology and the ecosystem that's living down there. We want living soils. Water's super important. We're going to get chlorine filters soon for all of our water pumps, because right now what's happening is even if you build that soil up, if your plants start to get stunted, like for example, at our Channel Islands garden, our soil was looking really good and our plants are doing good. And if you feel the soil, it's like nice and moist, especially if you dig a little under, like it still has that moisture. But what's happening is it's becoming a little bit white and crusty on top from all of the salts that are coming through from our water. So if you filter that chlorine out, it'll actually help for the top layer to stay moist. And then it also allows, okay, so when roots are in the ground and the salts infiltrate the soil, that salt blocks the roots from being able to take nutrients up. So even if you have, and it can block from water coming up too. So even if you have like a nutrient rich soil or a really wet soil, if you have too many salts, your plant can't thrive in that environment.
Got it.
So it actually will kill the plant over time and kill your soil biology because your plants aren't living, your roots aren't growing, your soil's dying.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Crazy world down there.
It's a crazy world. Yeah. Well, thank you, Farmer Anna, for doing all of that work to make our soil super healthy in the gardens. I think our plants love it, and I know it takes time and the gardens are still new, but we appreciate everything you do to make the soil healthy.
Sure. And shout out to the students. They're taking care of our worms. We also had worm compost in there too.
Oh.
And we've added several applications of compost tea. So students will harvest the worm castings. So we've done this at our CI garden. Our Pacifico garden gets it a lot. That soil, even though the salts are in the soil, looks better compared to Channel Islands because we've had students continually taking the worm bin. We had a group from Mr. Brister's class who was like always checking on the worms and feeding them, and they would take that compost and they would mix it in a bucket for about like 10-15 minutes and then apply it to our soils, and our plants loved it. And you can see like how squishy and juicy our soil is. My favorite thing for worm compost is when you take the good stuff out and then you squeeze it and you see all the water filter through your hands. It's crazy how much leaks down.
That's amazing.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, what else?
Is that our timer?
What else should we talk about with the book, or should we wrap up? I gotta say, the chapter I'm currently on is about fish and what's happening with like man-made dams and how that affects the salmon. And so even talking about sustainable fishing methods for tuna, which I think is super fascinating, and the process of how they catch the tuna and how that impacts the taste. It's got me thinking like on a totally different level about fish that I buy, because I like fish or sushi, if you like sushi. So it's a great book. It's super interesting, and I'm really glad we read it. Do you guys have any other thoughts or comments?
I love that there's recipes included at the end of each chapter.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
So it kind of is a cool book because it gives you an action to do after you read it and kind of connects you back with your food. You're not just reading about it, you have like an action way of going about it. I like that she visits different farms and tries to get different experiences out there, and lets the farmer kind of tell their story to her, and she's able to pass that along to other people, which is a really cool way to write a book for your community. Yeah, it was nice. It was a good read. The chapters are nice, like good length, so you can dive in and cook.
Yeah.
Well, from the other video uploaded where she did the demo of how to make tortillas also, so you guys can see that as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do that soon. And then should we talk about our next book?
Yes. Would you guys like to see the cover?
Yes. What are we reading next?
Never.
Find it.
On guerrilla gardening. So what's guerrilla gardening?
Okay, you guys, we're going rogue. Guerrilla gardening is amazing. It's a way of, if you don't have land, or if you're in an area and there's a space that you want to beautify, or if you drive by like a road median every day and there's a bunch of weeds growing in it and you just think that someone would benefit from having some type of plant or food growing there, that's what it's all about. You take on a piece of property that's not yours, that's kind of forgotten and unloved, and you revamp it and make it beautiful for your community. So guerrilla gardening, this book is awesome. It gives a bunch of different examples. Guerrilla gardeners have like certain names and numbers, so you don't actually know who it is. They have like code names. And it just gives examples of all the different ways people are trying to improve their communities, and stories about how people unite together. Like, I'll show you a picture. It's beautiful. There was a garden in Santa Monica, I believe, that a group of people had like created together, and then the city was planning on taking it down. So all these celebrities and community members like got together to band together and like try and save this community garden that was like on a lot that didn't belong to them. Unfortunately, it got torn down, but still the thought behind it is you're bringing community together and beautifying a place that everyone can enjoy and share.
Awesome. I'm going to start reading it today.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Okay.
It's pretty rad, you guys. And then if you yourself found a spot, I personally have found my own guerrilla gardening area. I planted some pumpkin seeds. There's a house that got burnt down in the Thomas fire out here, and it's okay.
You little rebel.
No one will know where it is, but there will be a pumpkin patch somewhere. And you guys, they're going to like it. It's good.
That's amazing.
For October, spreading that cheer.
Spreading that cheer.
We need it.
Yeah.
All right. So
Guys.
next week, guerrilla gardening.
Guerrilla gardening.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.